Okay, today I will be talking about Harry Lloyd Hopkins for the historical presentation. I wanted to talk a little bit about before we get to him, a little bit my props. My props is actually a newspaper article of him, but also I decided to dress up and wear business casual slacks and a nice shirt because from where this guy comes from, is an extremely important job, respectable job. People respected who he was and things like that. And so I felt like I think almost all the pictures I've seen too, he's wearing a suit. So I think I felt personally that dressing up would give him the respect that this guy deserves. He did a lot of great work, and so I wanted to little talk about that. The article that I have, I will talk about later in the presentation, but I found it very interesting. A little bit why I picked Harry Hopkins. He came to me as a really interesting person. I decided to do research on him because he popped out real quick and like he was just born to be made and born right into just helping others. He was born right into social work. Um, he did have some push and pull from his parents to the man he was, but it's really not much of an influence because his father, David Aldona, was an entrepreneur. He just did random jobs. It really wasn't necessarily helping people. It wasn't necessarily doing other things that help people that gave Harry the idea. And so, however, though, um, he was just a person, a father working odd jobs. But the influence I do believe he got was from his mother. His mother's name was Anna Pickett. She worked at a church, a Methodist church that she belonged to, and she was very active, very religious, and worked hard to keep up that church. And most of the time, even in the past and even today, churches are built on helping each other, helping the congregation, the people in it. And so if she dealt with a lot of work in there, he probably saw it. It makes a lot of sense to me that he probably got the influence from his mother. The hard work though and ethic probably came from his father. His father just worked everywhere just to be a father. Um, and what's really interesting is so I don't think helping and serving others were a foreign concept. But what's interesting is that his first job was straight into social work or the idea of social work. He wasn't a social worker, but just helping others. It was actually a settlement house in the ghetto of Lower East New York. I can't imagine being a white male in the lower ghetto side of New York in this time. And I forgot to mention he was born 1890 and died 1946. So he was around 1920s, 1930s when a lot of his work was done. Um, but he just makes smooth and quick transitions from job to job. But all these jobs are social work based, and so he just was made for it. He seems to like there's nothing that he did beforehand or oh he did this that's different. The only information on this guy is social work, and so I was like that's is amazing for one, but it's impressive. I mean, I can't imagine. Um, so his early life, that was a little bit why I picked him. His early life, he was born for the fourth child of four sons and one daughter, like I said, of David Aldona and Anna Pickett. He took an interest of helping others. He graduated from Grinnell College, and the settlement house was in New York City. Um, but with that experience, he was able to accept a position from John A. Kingsbury's of the New York Association for Improving the Conditions of the Poor, which is AICP, I guess, as a friendly visitor and superintendent of the employment bureau with that. And so that means he's already trying to help people get employed, helping others. Um, and things like that. My reflection on this little tidbit is that the settlement houses were interesting. I never actually knew what they were. I mean, I kind of could have guessed, but they were known for inner city areas that provided education, recreational, and similar social service to the community. So that was one of the very first things he did, and so he already got thrown in with the most help he could possibly do for the most vulnerable people. He's already dealing with the most vulnerable people, and even at that time, even today, I think people would have an issue uh, finding reasons to why this white person might be helping. So I can imagine in 1920s, 1930s, what these people might have thought. Um, one of his achievements is one of the things that he did. He organized a Bronx Park employment program, and what makes this amazing, it says it's one of the first public employment program in the United States. That's amazing. The program itself helped low income families, and it helped during the 1915 recession, which means A lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people looking for work couldn't find work, and this helped. Um, and he's a part of it. His name's on it, so that just throws him. His importance goes sky high. His importance goes, extremely high. And the amount of work that would have to go into a program like that during the recession because of how horrible it was. We can't experience it, but we can read about it, and it's just it sounds awful. It sounds absolutely terrible. And supposedly we went into one a little bit recently, but not nearly as bad as something like that. Um, but he ends up moving his family after helping with this program to New Orleans so he could work for the American Red Cross as a director of the civilian relief. This company ends up merging with a different division, and he becomes a general manager with the Southwest division of the American Cross. So he's already just, climbing ladders of the type of work he's doing, his ideas of wanting to get higher. He mentions wanting to help others. He mentions um, the ideas he has, the work he puts in, and so I believe there was a reason behind why he wanted to go higher and higher because he can make his ideas actually on paper, not just on paper but in real life, and he does that a little later. Um, but he ends up becoming the president of American Social Workers, and he's got this much control and weight and importance. I mean, that's the president of the American Association of Social Workers. He's already put so much experience in, and then he's even higher up. But what this allows him to do, it pushed his ideas into the community. He had a bunch of ideas. He felt like the federal government, if the state government couldn't help, the national government could help. If the national government couldn't help, federal government. And so he just felt like these people deserve that help, and so he was going to make that happen one way or another. And he kind of used that power to in a good way. Some people get higher and higher and kind of CEO of something, and they end up kind of losing the importance of where they started. He didn't. He absolutely didn't. He kept working hard, so hard that he ends up becoming quite busy in his career and working for the president, which is Franklin D. Roosevelt at the time. He was a social worker in the 1920s in the New York City. During the stock market crash in 1929, he dealt with Franklin D. Roosevelt, and he worked as an emissary and closest personal advisor to him during World War II. He was able to use his ideology for different types of work to reform, to help with the president and reform projects to help the poor and low income families. An example of that is one of the major projects Hopkins did alongside Franklin Roosevelt was the Temporary Emergency Relief Administration, which provided direct relief and work relief for the unemployed throughout the state of New York. This is the second or third program he's been in to help the people of New York for jobs, for just straight, whether it's relief for food, shelter. It was also work. And then he was also the head of the new Federal Emergency Relief Administration as well. And so people knew who he was, what kind of power. But what they did know though is if you put this man in power, they knew exactly what he would do, and that's help. He wouldn't abuse it. He wouldn't go, you know, devil's advocate and just completely do the opposite. One of these things during the new Federal Emergency Relief Administration, he actually had a makeshift desk in the middle of a hall at this Reconstruction Finance building, and it kind of blocked the hall, but that's where he sat. But he actually crafted up a new program during this time that would eventually put 15 million people to work. The idea behind that is I mean, this pretty much shows the magnitude of this of Hopkins' mind on how he felt, how he worked extremely hard, but how he felt about the world, how he felt about these people, and how much he truly wanted to help people. And he actually did just that. So when he had the power, when he had the opportunity, he actually created a program that eventually put 15 million people to work. And back to what I had mentioned earlier, one of his thoughts was that if he thought private companies would not support their employees, give them the health insurance, give them the help, then the state government should, and the state government didn't. The national government should. So felt like these people deserved it, and if someone wasn't going to give it, someone else definitely should. That had the power to, and I think that was the issue with him too. He had to rise up to have more power to be able to do these things. But the good thing he did. Um, like the but like I said, if Hopkins thought that they would find if he couldn't have someone else help, he would find a way to help. And I think this shows a lot about psychology, how this man thought, who he was, how he acted. He was respectable, and he was a white male. And I feel like, of course, a lot of the social workers I was looking up were white. A lot of them were female. But the issues we have and we talk about in culture about white male and power, and normally is negative. This man was absolutely the opposite. He seemed to put the absolute work into being able to do what needed to be done to help people. And it is truly amazing that he was able to. And the last thing I want to talk about is this article. Um, you might not be able to see it, but the title says the biggest job giver wants to lose his. Thought that title was pretty funny because he actually talks and quotes a little bit about how much work he wants to do, how many other ideas he had, the programs he wants to implement to make sure it's perfect. Even though perfection is impossible, he absolutely tried for it. So he was absolutely perfectionist. He wanted these things to be absolutely fixed for everyone. And he even mentions in this article a quote that says, um, if the time comes and all my work is done and I don't have a job, then I'll absolutely be content. And I think that kind of tells a lot about his character because of just truly what he wants with the world. And it's funny the title says that he would lose his job, and that's actually true. If the world was a perfect place and he had a perfect to help every single person, he wouldn't need to help anyone anymore. So he actually would lose his. Obviously, that's not viable or realistic, but it is very interesting to think about. And so I thought that article was pretty cool to bring in. Other than that, in conclusion, it really just shows um, what kind of man he was, the things he did, why he was important to social work, and I'm glad I picked him.